Hello people! Before we begin, I really would like to thank everyone who took this form. It was actually quite enjoyable seeing the results of this survey. For those of you that just want to see all the interesting bits, I'm going to leave timestamps to all of the sections of this analysis. Now, the first thing I'd like to mention is that I made one minor mistake in my questions. I do not think that asking the quantity of sex people have had was a good idea. Not because it's invasive, but because I forgot not everyone lives in England where the age of consent is 16 rather than 18. And one second thing I'd like to mention is that you may realise that the questions are not entirely generic. I feel like asking things like, what's your favourite TV show and what do you do in your free time, are a little too basic and overdone. What I wanted here was for a bit more specific answers, and whilst yes, I asked a few generic bits, I know what I was aiming for with each of them. Alright, to start off with the boring results. I just want to go over anything that is uninteresting or pretty much expected of a survey on r/teenagers. So to begin with, the gender distribution is very male heavy, almost identical to the actual user base of Reddit. 59% of those tested were men, so that would be 36, and roughly 33% tested were women, which would be 20. And as for the last few, we had 2 non-binaries, 2 bigenders, I'm presuming he/she is bigender as well, but correct me if I'm wrong, and 1 person who would prefer not to say. As for ages, most people who took it were between 15 and 17, 40 people to be exact. Now, 11 to 14 had 16 people, and I realise that it's probably a bit too low for a teenager's user, but I threw it in just in case. Finally, 18 to 20 had 5 people. Unsurprisingly, 0 to 10 was empty, as I'd have hoped. And whilst 20 plus people are allowed on the sub, none of them took the survey. Now, this age distribution leads on to the failure of the sex question. Even being realistic, the most people I saw commenting were 15-year-olds, so regardless of UK or US law, I'd hope their answer would be no sex. Truthfully, this question was a bit of a failure, but shout out to the 2 people that have sex every day. You guys/girls/others are absolutely killing it. Alright, now we are getting into the actual questions, but still the ones that gave results I would have expected. For video game choice, I got pretty much what I expected. I knew that the non-competitive games and FPSs would most likely dominate the statistic, and for the most part they did. Now unfortunately for this next bit, I've had to exclude anyone not male or female as they are too small a minority for me to be able to give any informative data. Anyway, splitting the games into genders, I'm also sticking to the preset categories. In the FPS category, out of the 12 people, 8 of them were male and 4 of them were female. In the non-competitive games, however, we got an odd result. Despite the men being almost double the women in the entire survey, they were completely even, 8 to 8. In the strategy category, 6 men, 3 women, and in the puzzle category, all 4 men. And finally, my personal favourite bunch of people, the rhythm gamers, 4 males and 2 females. And yeah, also 3 people say they just suck at all games, 2 women and 1 man. In the Pokemon category, I am not going to do a completely full breakdown of genders and who picked what. I think the surface level analysis I can make of this information is that people generally tend towards starter Pokemon or their Evos. Yes, I'm counting Pikachu as a starter. 23 people picked a starter or an Evo. 6 people picked an Evolution. And finally, 12 people did not have an opinion or very verbally expressed their distaste for the Pokemon franchise. Now, when it comes to music, I have awful taste, so I don't really think I'm fit to be able to really put this one into a good comparison between people. Honestly, like whatever you like, I'm the least allowed person to judge. I will, however, highlight some of the funnier answers at the end. Also, the same with fears. I can't really do a deep dive, but from a general look at it, it seems to be oriented around death and the feeling of being alone, and that makes a lot of sense. There isn't really much worse than that feeling of no one being there for you at all, your death being painful, or for you just to be forgotten to the test of time. Another good amount of answers mention the ocean and drowning. This is obviously Subnautica's fault, and I refuse to accept otherwise. Now, when it came to how interesting people consider their lives, I found the results quite good. Now to begin with, people getting up to the occasional thing was the clear winner. Most of us being on the internet likely means we have less of an outside life, but not so bad that we have none, usually. I think the bit that interests me most is the near perfect split between a lot happening and nothing happening. I would have thought that having nothing to do would be more dominant, as a lot of us generally do have nothing to do. I mean, you took this form. However, it's clear people actually get up to more exciting lives than I first presumed. And once again, there is one person who is a magnet to interesting things. Okay, as for the last section of the mildly interesting facts, is the memes. Honestly, I don't know what results I was expecting, but I can try to take some guesses. Meme 1. Clearly, a lot of people aren't physics enjoyers. I believe the average was probably around 2 or 3 because of the dog. I mean, the original image alone is quite funny. And for actual accuracy, the score was 2.75. Meme 2. People very much do not take kindly to offensive jokes. This was the most disliked of the bunch, with 22 people giving it a 1, and it scoring an average of 2.55. Meme 3, on the other hand, this was the most liked, on average, with a dominating 22 fours. I believe it's because it follows a standard format and is a situation a lot of us can relate to. It scored an average of 3.09. And finally, Meme 4. Despite all of that, Meme 4 actually got the most 5 ratings and caused the largest divide among the people. I believe this might be either down to it not following any form of meme format, but instead being an image, or because it starts trending a lot more towards the anime/weeb sides of people, which, whilst I didn't test it, I think the sub is fairly evenly split on their opinions of anime, which is represented through this meme's rating, that being it scoring a 2.97 on average. As for genders, on average, women gave the memes a score of 2.8, and men give the memes 2.9. So my conclusion on that? People on the internet have the same sense of humour. It's not those certain genders find one meme funny and that others find another funny, and this judgment is definite, because I tried to avoid gender-specific memes. Now let's get into some of the interesting stuff. Let us begin with our good old friends, the sexual deviants, alright? To begin with, there was a lot of people who considered themselves not sexual deviants in any shape or form. Now, I have a shame to admit, I really should have offered a I have no fetishes at all option, so as a compromise, I've had to manually edit some results just to make them more accurate. More specifically, due to the second scale being 1 to 9, I've changed it to 2 to 10, with the only difference being that people who put 1 and 1 as both answers, I have left them as 1 and 1. So what does this leave us with? Well, as a start, the biggest jump was from 3 people who all jumped 5 places when the chart was revealed. On the other hand, only 4 people had a decrease in their deviancy when they saw the chart, all of them only by 1. Now this is the interesting bit, and actually what I wanted to test with this question. How much do people actually think they are deviants? So what I have here is the average increase in people's score after they saw the chart. And without further ado, that number is 1.4. So what does this mean? Well, it either means I've ruined the question by making changes, but regardless of that fact, there would have been an average increase upon seeing the chart. I think this is likely because a lot of people probably don't like to consider themselves that weird in a sexual aspect. I mean, some people might even be lying about their score, putting lower than they really feel, but I can only guess that. I think the weirdest factor is that the highest jumps happened in people who gave themselves a lower score. Now, that sounds correct because obviously someone who picked 2 and was a 7 would be different to someone who picked 5 and got a 7. But if you look at the chart, everyone with 5 and above, excluding one person, jumped up or down only 1 place. Whereas people in the lower end all took massive leaps, a lot of them too, especially around the area of 4. So what do I say? Be proud of who you are. A lot of us are into more... I don't know why I wrote that into the script, I would be shot for saying that. A lot of us are into more weird things than we realise, and honestly, it might not be something you want to show off, but it's not something that you and only you have. So don't feel so ashamed of it. Unless you are the 2 people who picked 10 and stayed at 10. I'm not sharing who, but they should get a room. For legal reasons, that is a joke. The 2 people in question are of different ages, and I'm not insinuating that they should have illegal sexual contact. One last fetish bit. Shout out to the guy that rated himself 8 on the scale and still managed to have 1 or 2 sexes. You, sir, are my idol. On to luck. I think it makes me happy to see that no one considered themselves a luck of 1, because to be a luck of 1, I doubt you'd have been able to take the test. But on the contrary, I'm curious what the people with a luck of 10 have gotten for them to consider themselves so high. Either way, people tended to sway specifically on 3, 5, and 7. I have no idea why, but specifically these 3. And for some reason, people just don't like the numbers 4 and 6. Women on average rated themselves a luck of 5.75. Men on average rated themselves a luck of 5.72, a 0.03 difference. So the conclusion, we all for the most part consider ourselves the same amount of luck. Now, for the final set of results, how happy are you with your physical appearance? I tried to make sure that people were more inclined to pick a more honest number, as I understand that a lot of us will rate ourselves a lot lower than we really are. However, the results are still pretty shocking, I mean, to a degree. On average, men rated themselves a 3.3, however, women rated themselves 2.25, more than 1 whole point of difference. Now, I could talk about gender roles and how the standard of attraction for women is a lot higher than men's, etc., etc., but I know nothing about that. It will be complete conjecture, and I'm not here to start a political or whatever scientific kind of a debate it is, because I have no argument to be made. The only thing I see from this information is that women tend to view themselves worse than men. Now, everyone knows you can't have a survey without a share of funny answers, and this section here is dedicated to them. So, without further ado, in response to which of these game genres would you say you are the best at, we had I am a 70-year-old man in a 14-year-old's body, I don't play video games, and Vroom Vroom Cargo Noom. In response to who is your favourite band/musician, we had one disgruntled participant state that why the fuck did this test go from sexual fetishes to bands, only for him to then further state, either way, I don't have one lol. And we also had a guy that said the bug I put in your mum's shower. So thank you for complimenting my mother's singing, unless that's actually a band, which in that case, I have no idea. To the two people who said Imagine Dragons, Imagine Dragons. In response to the Pokemon question, we had I don't remember Pokemon all that well, but I think his name was Squirtle. I used to call him Danny because I was 4. Then we had Monokuma, clearly a Danganronpa fan, I see. And my personal favourite, out of almost all of the answers, was Weed Cat. And finally, in response to the fear question, we had some guy say taxation, of which he then corrected, saying it's needles, but I will not be accepting a second answer. So, in conclusion, what do you have to be on the r/Search Teenager sub to be the most common person? Anyway, you must be 15 to 17, male, had absolutely no sex, a little bit of a degenerate, an enjoyer of first-person shooters or non-competitive games, someone decently happy with their appearance, must have a fairly mediocre but occasionally interesting life, be quite lucky, have their favourite Pokemon be a starter or one of its Evos, or for that matter, don't have a favourite Pokemon because you've never played it, fear anything relating to death and loneliness, have a decent sense of humour, so much that they can take an offensive joke. So, one final note, thank you again, everyone out of the 64 that took it. This was a lot of fun to record and also a lot of fun to analyse. I really just messed up the last bit. A lot of fun to record and analyse. Thank you.